With regards to the accusation that LGB Alliance are exclusionary, I think it is perfectly legitimate to have organisations that focus on gender identity, that focus on trans issues. I also think it is entirely legitimate to have organisations that focus upon those of us who are same-sex attracted. And I don't think there's really any natural pairing between sexual orientation, so who you fancy, and identity, who you think you are. And I think actually the sort of marrying together of these two issues has been part of a funding strategy by the large LGBT organisations like Stonewall.
Jo, why do you think you get so much backlash? LGB Alliance, I've seen it online, I've seen, video footage of people kicking off. They don't like the fact that you don't have the T in the LGB Alliance. Why do you think there's so much anger there?
A lot of the anger actually comes from cognitive dissonance. I think people haven't thought through the issues. Because if you argue, for example, that a trans woman is a woman, then logically it follows some of those trans women will be lesbians. So that means, for example, that you have to accept the idea of a lesbian with a penis, or a trans man who identifies as gay with a vulva. Now, that's actually quite homophobic as a concept. That's really offensive to a lot of us who are same-sex attracted. And we have at the conference today people like Simon Fanshawe, who was one of the founding fathers of Stonewall, and he's now come to realise that actually there are problems about adding gender identity to sexual orientation. So I think actually a lot of the anger is misdirected. I think it's misunderstood. And I think, frankly, it's because people haven't bothered to think through the issues and they're just sort of taking the easiest route.
It is interesting, though, how proportionally few people of minority sexual interest identify with just the letters LGB alone. YouGov did a poll back in June of this year that found that just 4% of non-straight men would identify as LGB, with the rest going with LGBTQ, LGBT, LGBT plus, and those are the ones. Just 4% said LGB, whereas with women who have sex with women, just 2% identified with the acronym LGB rather than the other ones that include transgender people. Is this organisation particularly representative?
Absolutely, I think it is. As I say, I think, most people, why should any particular group be tasked with sort of unpicking what very wealthy lobby groups have spent a long time embedding into policy, into structures, into institutions? I think the default setting is be kind. And I think the split you've seen there between the 4% as, and I would like to see how that poll was conducted, but the 4% who apparently identify as men, who are, as you say, men who have sex with men, so I would say gay or bisexual men, and the disparity between that and the 2% of women, I think actually that shows that women have a far greater social pressure to be kind and to be nice and to be accepting. And I think that in itself shows why sex matters, why sex difference matters, and why this is the idea of things like lesbians with penises is putting a huge amount of pressure on the lesbian community.
Now, Jo, sorry, we're running out of time, but I do want to get this question in because this is something that many of our viewers and listeners are concerned about, and it is the theme of the Alliance conference today, which is how schools are approaching transition among young people with gender dysphoria or who are gender non-conforming. What concerns do you expect to be raised about this?
Yeah, so speaking at the moment, there's a massive concern, in fact, that the guidance that was promised in 2018 hasn't yet materialised, and also that there has been a huge rise in young women, in particular, identifying as men. And we know that a disproportionate number of those would have otherwise grown up to be healthy lesbians. And what is happening is they are being put on a medical pathway, they are binding their breasts, they are sometimes undergoing sometimes they're obtaining hormones online, and that can lead to sterilisation, and that can lead to massive health problems. So essentially, I think what we are fighting here, and what is going on particularly with some of the conversations around schools, is this is gay eugenics.